The White House this morning is geared up for some damage control. Last night it announced that Clarence Thomas, the man the president has nominated for the Supreme Court, has smoked marijuana.
On Capitol Hill this morning, Thomas pronounced his drug use old news.
No, it's been dealt with, guys. Thank you.
The disclosure created hardly a ripple in the Senate. One politician after another echoed the White House's claim that the fact that Thomas smoked pot a couple of times in college was inconsequential.
David Brooks isn't the only famous conservative who smoked pot. That was Clarence Thomas, copping to it years ago during his confirmation hearings. Joining me now, Khary Lazarre-White, co-founder and co-executive director of Brotherhood Sister Soul, youth advocacy organization, comedian actor Jordan Carlos, and Vanita Gupta, deputy legal director at the ACLU. So here is what I think is important about the national conversation that has emerged about Colorado in the last few days, and the Brooks column, which has been just absolutely pilloried on the internet, is just the open secret of the fact of the use of marijuana everywhere you look along all strata of society. And the fact that outside the context of being a cop with a number to hit on a corner in a poor neighborhood, almost no one cares. And people view it as a joke, basically. It's an open joke. It's a thing you recall. And yet it's not a joke. When you are in cuffs, right, Khary?
Yeah, it's not a joke at all. This issue has its side that's comical, and we all are laughing at it. But on the other side, you have an issue where you've had 15 million arrests, or 10 million arrests, excuse me, in the last 15 years. 10 million arrests for marijuana, number one. Number two, you have about 750,000 people a year arrested for marijuana usage, right? So what that means is that every year we are arresting and prosecuting more people for marijuana usage than for violent crime. And so we're using resources, we're using police time, we're using the courts for something that people either consider comical or many people don't believe should be illegal. And yet our resources are being put into that space. And so it's something that society has to look at because we're wasting resources, dollars, and precious time.
But doesn't that, like, you know, cops want to make their bus, right? And then
or they're told they have to make their bus, right?
You're right. They're told that, and we like the prison system, that has to run on something, right? But and for me at least, I worry about that. If I ever did a hand-on-hand in the street, I mean, see, I can't even pronounce it. If I ever did one, that'd be really bad for me. But I'm just so excited that, you know, Washington, Colorado, I can go there no problem. And buy.
Well, that's and a lot of people are precisely for that reason. I mean, and there is a. I mean, here, look at the chart of the U.S. prison population. This is just a really important graphic when you're talking about like what would the prisons like. Look what happens. We declare a war on drugs, and then we start putting more people as a percentage of our population in jail than any other industrialized democracy. So the question for you, Vanita, is from a policy perspective, since Colorado has initiated the national conversation, does the Colorado policy address this problem, this kind of double standard problem where it's like, okay, the people at University of Boulder are getting high in their dorm rooms and not getting busted, dealers in Denver are getting rolled up on the streets. Like, does this address the problem?
Look, what's happening right now in Colorado and Washington is way more than just allowing recreational marijuana users to have access. It is about a fundamental sea change in how we are approaching drug abuse, drugs in our country. We're establishing a regulatory scheme in the way that we are doing with tobacco and alcohol, and saying that the business as usual in the war on drugs has simply failed. We haven't actually had a dent in the demand for these drugs. What we need to now do, just as Colorado and Washington are doing, are reinvesting, reprioritizing society's dollars, taxpayer dollars, into education, health care, particularly in communities that have been essentially robbed of these kinds of dollars, and where it's all been diverted mostly exclusively to criminal justice. It simply hasn't worked, and we need a new paradigm. And that, to me, is what Colorado and Washington State are about. And it goes way beyond marijuana. I mean, I think it is
that is the key point.
Right. I mean, it's a mistake, right, for us to think, oh, well, you know, with marijuana legalization, we are solving all these problems. That is simply not the case. We have a lot more work to do. This is really about a shift in paradigm and understanding that we cannot continue to invest in prisons and arrests as the only solution. It has been a racial crisis, and it has been a completely ineffective policy.
And the hope in the progressive community is that this can open a conversation about what the criminal justice system looks like.
Okay, everyone's got their weed.
As the country that incarcerates more people than any other nation in the world, what we want to look at is what is going on within the criminal justice system, the racially disparate arrests, prosecution, and incarceration. The entire system needs to be rehabilitated and transformed. transformed. And so the hope is that this conversation is one that will allow us to look at marijuana, but will then move to the next steps of both other drugs, but also what does rehabilitation look like? What does corrections look like? What do the laws look like that are disproportionately putting so many people in our prisons?
Because you criminalize, it's like you criminalize people for being black or poor, or I mean, back
or
in the
being
day,
young, right? I mean, that's the other thing. And you must see that all the time. I mean,
all the time, all the time.
And so here, this is to me the real deep point here. How much of this is our society's going to find ways to do this sorting process? And the way it's found is the war on drugs, and how much of it is the policy is actually driving this. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
it's like we are doing this marking. We've done it in other ways. Michelle Alexander's argument in The New Jim Crow is that we've been doing marking in other ways. This is the way we've chosen to mark it now, and you squeeze the balloon and you get a stratified society. Right. Vanita.
Yeah, no, look, I think it is about both of those things. I think we aren't going to, there are a lot of ways in which black and brown people are victimized by our criminal justice system with racially disproportionate arrests that go way beyond kind of minor drug offenses.
Right.
We have to address kind of, you know, racial stereotypes and attitudes and racial targeting in law enforcement. Yeah. But I also think we have to fundamentally rethink, you know, our criminal justice priorities. We have allowed the criminal justice system to basically become the catch-all solution for too much in this country, and it has preyed. We have been able, you know, as a society, to basically use our criminal justice system to prey upon black and brown communities to great devastation, and that is what is, you know, and you know, we can talk about. I mean, the war on drugs has been used not only to justify these terrible policies in the criminal justice system, but even ones kind of far beyond, and you know, such as the kind of Florida drug testing case of welfare recipients. That to me really is fundamentally about the war on drugs and racial stereotypes, and yeah.
And that case where Florida's drug testing its welfare recipients, that's a perfect example of this kind of marking, right? It's like, oh yeah, the president. We all know the president smoked pot. He did a little blow, as he famously wrote. But it's like, oh, you want welfare? Like, show me you're not on drugs.
That's right. Yeah, that's part of the ramification for young people, that it's an entry into the criminal justice system.
Yes.
And that the conviction of the misdemeanor can mean that you can't have certain jobs, you can lose public housing, you can lose benefits. There are serious ramifications for low-level drug offenses.
Like, I don't think you'd ever have to, like, take a drug test to apply for a mortgage or something.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Go introduce that or run for Congress. Khary Lazarre-White, Jordan Carlos, and Vanita Gupta. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Friday night. That is all in for this evening. The Rachel Maddow Show starts right now. Good evening, Rachel.
Chris, that was such a brilliant antidote to the David Brooks column. I feel like I've been cleansed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, man.